Hello and welcome to everyone out there in the Actual Tech Media audience. Thank you so much for joining us on this special webinar event. The topic of today is how to secure your unruly, unstructured data from ransomware. This event is made possible thanks to our friends at Rubrik. Now, before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about the event today. First off, I should mention my name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as the host and moderator. We always want these events to be educational, and we encourage your questions there in the questions pane of the audience console. I see many of you have already said hello and good afternoon, but we also want your technical questions on today's topic. We'll be doing a Q&A session at the end of the webinar today, so keep those questions coming. We've also got an awesome demo lined up, so I'm sure that will generate some extra questions on the webinar today. I also want to call your attention to the handouts tab. It's there that you'll find two different resources. The first one is on protecting unstructured data, and the second PDF there is the Rubrik NAS Cloud Direct. Make sure that you download those PDFs and you can check those out after the event. At the end of the webinar, it'll be my pleasure to announce the winner of our Amazon $250 gift card. If you're watching this on demand or recorded, of course, that drawing has already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found right there in your handouts tab as well. And then to help further encourage some questions, maybe you've got a question on your mind, you're not quite sure if you should ask it. We've got a best question prize again today as well for an additional Amazon $50 gift card. What that means is that you have to ask a question to be entered into the prize drawing, and of course, still meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. All right, with that housekeeping information out of the way, I'm excited now to bring in today's expert presenters. Welcome to Chris Bourke, who's a specialist in unstructured data at Rubrik, and Joe Harlan, who's a go-to-market technical lead at Rubrik. Chris and Joe, it's great to have you on the webinar today. I'll first hand it off to you, Chris. Take it away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We're excited to be here as well. All right, let's get into it. So, the first thing, just lead off, our job today and our goal is to really talk more about the industry, what we're seeing with unstructured data, and give you a deeper dive into how we solve problems for our customers. Again, looking at it, I'm Chris Bourke. So I am a specialist for Rubrik, spent years in the file and unstructured data world at different technology partners. And I now support the entire Mississippi River West in terms of unstructured data protection. I've been over at Rubrik for over a year now. Very excited to be here. And so also we'll see, we have Joe Harlan, who has come from the customer side and then come over to Rubrik, been working with many different technologies in our organization. He's now focused specifically on unstructured data and from the technology side and how we integrate that and take it to the next level with our customers. Now looking at the agenda today. So first things first, is there a problem? And so we're going to talk about the security challenges we're seeing in terms of unstructured data, how we approach it, go through the demo, and then talk about the resources and finally answer any questions. And so without further ado, let's get into the drum roll. All right, unstructured data. I think everyone on the call understands the difference between structured and unstructured data. What we're finding and seeing is that unstructured data, whether it's medical images, whether it's manufacturing data, insurance documents, sensor data, IoT devices, is being created at a massive scale. And it's an alarming rate of how much is being produced. And what we're finding is that the bad guys, the bad actors, they don't care if your data is structured or unstructured. What they do care about is going after the data you have in your organization and trying to monetize that. And there's three main challenges we're seeing in the unstructured data space and why it's a prime target. One is the scale. First, unstructured data is growing faster than any other data set in the world. Two is the sprawl. Most organizations have different departments with unstructured data or NAS systems that are living underneath a desk or not really monitored by the centrally IT governing body. And three is the amount of touch points that unstructured data has. Many different organizations have many people touching this data. So these are multiple attack vectors that are potential areas of vulnerability and ability to be compromised. Now, most of this unstructured data, we'll say, unstructured data, because it's so large, there's a lot that's not valuable. But you know what? A lot of organizations have their corporate IP, have very sensitive data, PII data and HIPAA compliant data located in these NAS systems around their organization. And so thus, that's why we're seeing a very desire for organizations to actually start protecting this workload. Maybe because they haven't before, but now it's a business critical issue based on cyber insurance requirements from customers, where they need to focus on this. Now, unstructured data. It's very vertical specific. It's very much a beast. When you look at the structured data side, you have your VMs, you replicate them, you back up those VMs, you replicate that. It's a very, very simple process. We look at unstructured data. Depending on your organization, you either the data is created, and the only way to protect that's been replicate to a secondary site. And other than that, there's been no other way to protect it. Now, NAS is not just one question. You ask NAS what it is. NAS is many different types of workflows: large files, small files, and many different NAS vendors can support the organization. And so the value is going to be very different to organizations of how much they value this data. But the question still remains: of this data, of all this information, do you know where your sensitive data lives? Are you able to identify where that PII data is, and what organizations have access to which shares, and what type of data is being transferred over? And something happens, can you recover that data? And that's a question we're seeing a lot of customers having that they can't answer. That's more of a lot of shoulder shrugs of yep, I hope I'm not compromising this data, because I don't have a solution for it. Now, when we look at what's been in the market today, now the beautiful NDMP, it's been out there since 1995. It was great for protecting tens of terabytes, but what we're seeing customers today is not being able to protect this at scale. Specifically, we have customers that are trying to complete their NAS backups with NDMP that are taking 35 days to complete. Now, they're in the business of promising reliable data accessibility to their customers. And so the fact that their backups are taking 35 days, they're missing their compliance, and they're not able to deliver the service they need to keep on growing their business. The other solution we see is the snap and replication. Now, I'll be the first person to tell you, I think snap and replication is great. That is your first line of defense. That is, if someone fat fingers some data and you need a quick recovery of that file, that's where you're going to go. And I think that's the simplest way to recover that data. Now, what it doesn't solve for, though, is that data truly cyber resilient? If you were compromised on that production file system and that data is replicated over to the second site, can you ensure it's a clean copy that you recover from? What we're finding is that's not the case. And so that need for that tertiary, that true immutable code-based and credential isolated separated copy of data is out there. Now, instead of looking at how many different systems I can have in my environment, I want the simplest, most effective way to do this. And that's what we're going to talk about in a little bit. All right. Diving deeper into it. So what we're seeing is that organizations, cyber insurance providers are now mandating that snap and replication does not truly protect your data. Now, probably not everyone here is in the healthcare space. Probably not everyone has Epic. But what we are seeing, just to point out, a single vertical that has compliance regulations similar to other regulated other industries, is that snap and replication does not qualify customers to meet that audit requirement that their data is protected. Epic, to make the honorable requirement, is stating that you have to have that separated copy of data. The data lives offside of your production file system, that we're somewhere else. So if something were to happen to that, you can recover that data and cover a clean copy of that to that same location or to any location. And so with the challenges that we're seeing, whether it's unable to meet your NAS backup performance because you're using NDMP, or not being cyber resilient or cyber secure, which is a snap and replication, Rubrik has looked at this challenge and solved it in a completely different way that hasn't been done before. And so what we look at is we take all your NAS data and we protect it in the most cost-effective, most efficient way possible. We ensure that you can have a true resilient solution to recover that data to any location. And we're providing the tools and the resources to make sure your business can come back online if you were attacked, and recover not just all your data, but the right data in the fastest time that you need it. Now, when we look at Rubrik as a whole, we are a cyber resiliency, cyber recovery portfolio company. Now, we focus on, yes, backing up is great, but what good is backing up data if you can't recover it? You can't recover the data and the right data in the SLAs that you need. What we're talking about today is the unstructured data. Most organizations are pretty locked down and protecting on their VM side, but why Rubrik has this solution is that over the last couple of years, based on the growth rate of unstructured data, it's not cost effective to add more storage in your environment. IT teams don't want additional complexity. They want to be automated and simplistic in terms of protecting this data. So this NAS Cloud Direct product, right in that second column, is just a software we deploy. We don't deploy any hardware. This VM itself will then scan all your unstructured data, head across any different file system. All this will be managed under the Rubrik Security Cloud, which is the main cloud again that can support all your data types. And then we can write this backup copies of data to any on-premise object or NFS target directly to any tier of the cloud. That includes Glacier Deep Archive and those offline tiers. And then also Rubrik offers a true cyber recovery cloud. And so this VM will move data to Rubrik's Cloud Vault, Rubrik Cloud Vault, the cyber recovery cloud, which will be our immutable, logically air-gapped storage. In addition, we'll be running a ransomware investigation off these backups and identifying sensitive data through additional analysis that we run in terms of this bundle. So we have multiple offers where it's BYOT, bring your own target, or all in, all inclusive. We manage the backups, we ensure that they're protected, and we run additional security benefits and analysis on this. And so moving forward, what is NAS Cloud Direct and why? Walk me through this. So what's just simplistic as possible. Any file system that you have, as long as it speaks NFS or SMB, we can scan that data. Now you'll see those four main file system providers on the left. These file system providers consist of a large portion of the overall enterprise file storage in the world. And so we have direct API integration with these technologies. And so we're able to lock it, we'll go into the API, take our own snapshots. That's after we deploy the stateless VM. So this VM holds nothing in it except the binaries. And we deploy the VM, we'll scan billions of files and petabytes of data. I have a customer today that's able with a single VM to do an incremental backup of 4 petabytes and also scan 1.1 billion files and 22 million directories in just 4 hours. Now, at first I was like, that's pretty cool. But the fact that we're able to scan billions of files in 4 hours allows us to do our other operations faster to make sure we're meeting your SLAs to back it up. Now that metadata, once we scan it, will live in Rubrik Security Cloud. And so it's separated from your data center. And why we do that is we're trying to abstract the index and catalog. So that's not something our customers manage anymore. We manage it for you in our secure cloud so we can scale this to billions and 100 billions of objects. Now, once that's deployed, we scan the data. We then leverage SLAs and policies to write this copy of data to any on-premise NFS or S3 target or directly to any tier of the cloud. The simplest way to look at it is that this platform is infinitely scalable, protecting all your NAS data, where you can leverage any target, any NFS or S3 target you want, and multiple targets with the same backup. And we are truly incremental forever. So we're never going to write the same copy of data twice to that same target. And what we found with our integration and IP that we created, like to scan this data, is that we can scan data faster than SnapDiff and any changeless trackings or any other OEM technologies. Now let's double click into this. Let's look into more details of this. So again, any file system, NFS or SMB, and then we have our VM. Our VM has 3 main pillars. That's the scanning, the index, and the movement. And so we'll scan that data. And what we do differently than anyone else is we do all 3 operations and in parallel at the same time. So as we're scanning the data and understanding any changes, we then move the data once we identify a change. And once it lands, we commit it to our index. Now, being able to do all 3 in parallel drastically shortens the amount of time it takes to complete these jobs so that we're knowing we'll be able to meet the performance and the SLAs to complete your backup. The VMs itself can actually cluster together to improve and grow the amount of concurrent threads that you're able to run to achieve your NAS backup protection. Now, why is this so great? You can start small and continually grow as your organization grows. You don't need to plan ahead and be like, I need 20 VMs to manage like what I'm going to be in 5 years. No, we're going to grow with our customers because our VMs scale out or even scale up depending on what you need to then complete your backup. The next question I usually get is, hey, Chris, okay, you've told me you can scan the data really fast. You're going to take down my production file system? Well, that's something the team thought about early on in our development, whereas like we want to plan ahead for this because your production file system is valuable to your business. You can't have any additional latency. So we built in a dynamic throttle so that we monitor the latency on your production file system during those backup jobs. So at any point in time we go above that millisecond threshold latency, we'll dynamically throttle our VM down as to be non-impactful to what's happening. And once that we go below that threshold, we then turn back our concurrent threads to complete your backup window. Now, the index itself, I mentioned, can go to hundreds of billions of objects. That's why we really think the index should be in a hyper-scalable platform, so that the customers are not responsible for managing. All right, we have new data sets coming in. We acquired a company. I got to back this data up, but my index is already maxing out the storage. That is not a problem anymore. That's something we manage as a SaaS offering. And lastly, we can write this data to any target on-premise or any immutable target. And why you see two arrows there is we're able to have a single backup, right, to two different locations and with two different retention times. So I have a customer that has different SLAs on recovery for their data, and they want to have an insurance copy, but a fast recovery of data. So they write that one backup copy to on-prem object storage, and then that with a 30-day retention. They also write that same backup to AWS Glacier Deep Archive and to have that retention for 15 years. But so they know when they are recovering that data, they're recovering it more frequently from that on-prem object storage than they are from that cold archive cloud target. Now, what good is backing up data if you can't recover it? So, and how do you find all this data? And so built into our platform is a full global search. So across all backups that you have, across all the sites that you have, we give you the ability to have a very granular search, adding multiple tags and specifications to find where your backups are and what data you want, and then simply go from any point in time to restore that data to the same target or to any target you want. It's fully user-friendly and easy to administer. All right. And last thing I want to bring up and talk to is something a little separate from backing up the data. It's more of a data visualization, data understanding. So this tool called Data Discover really follows, it adds the value that customers find is where we see a profile with unstructured data, that 20% is really cold, 20% is active, and the other 80% is really cold. But every department you work with is going to hold on to that cold data forever because they think it's valuable and think they're using it. Now, this tool will scan the entire file system, gather all the metadata attributes, and let you know the last modifier and last access time with this data. In addition, you have the full ability to search this data and anything anywhere from the GID, UID, site name, extension, path, directory. You can find this data and go down to the file level to know where this cold data lives. And from there, you can create live views and reports with them to give those teams to let them know where their cold data is. Customers also are looking, hey, I need to take action. I want to get this data and archive it. Right from this UI, you can, with 2 clicks, you can archive this cold data and cold shares to any target you want. We're not going to delete it from your source, but we give you the ability to create that archive copy and then create the report to deliver to your team. Now, I look forward to the questions at the end, but you know what? It's time for a demo. I think my better half, Joe, would like to show you what this whole thing looks like.
All right, thanks, Chris. Let me get my screen shared here. There we go. Pull that up. Chris, let me know when you guys can see my screen here. It should be happening now, roughly speaking.
I can see your screen. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so Joe Harlan here. I'm going to run through the demo with you. So right now I've taken the time to go ahead and log into our platform, the Rubrik Security Cloud. This is our main SaaS platform, our one entry point into global command and control for all of your data protection needs under the Rubrik umbrella. So in order to get to NAS Cloud Direct, I'm going to pop over here to the clusters tab. You can see a handful of Rubrik clusters, and then I'm going to go to my NAS Cloud Direct tile, and that's going to open this tab in my browser. So this has taken me to the systems list page. You can see I have a handful of, I have virtualized Isilons and virtualized NetApps here, so, or Dell PowerScale, forgive me. And so much true to the form of Rubrik anyway, I'm going to start at policies, because with everything that we do, we don't like to manage jobs. We like to manage what we'd like to have happen and be declarative. And we do that through our SLAs and policies. So here we can see I have a handful defined, but I'm going to take you through the types that we have within this aspect of the product. So I'll click on Create Policy, and you'll see I'm immediately presented with some choice here. I can create a backup or an archive policy. The real difference between these two is that a backup can be scheduled and run periodically, but an archive has to be executed manually. Both are incremental forever, so you do still get to take advantage of that fact. But the archive policy, once the job has been completed, the expiration clock begins ticking for that copy of data. This is very different from a backup. We are a source-based expiration approach here. So if nothing has changed on the filer after taking a backup, then the expiration clock doesn't start. No new versions of those files haven't been deleted. The expiration clock doesn't start. This is very different with the archive policy. The archive says, take a picture of the data now, and in X amount of time, garbage collected from the storage target. I'm going to go ahead and take you through what it looks like to create a backup policy so we can get a kind of sense for these policies themselves. So you'll see as I start clicking through the options here in a moment, it's going to give you a name based upon my selections, completely configurable by you. You can change this anytime you like. So first we can set the in-queue time. This is basically declaring my backup window. During what window of time do I want these jobs to launch? Then I pick my frequency. Now most of my customers tend to set the daily frequency because we're incremental forever. But if you have a really high change rate or you just want to take weekly backups, you certainly may do so, all the way up to monthly. We can do as frequent as twice a day, so every 12 hours for those customers who want to take a more frequent recovery point. But again, most customers tend to stick with daily for their unstructured data sets. We can also set the policy to never, so if you need to pause protection, you can come in here and edit the policy, and anywhere you've applied it, we'll go ahead and stop backups for that duration while that setting is in place. I'll go ahead and stick with that. And then you can see we support all of the major hyperscalers, so Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform. We also have support for anything that speaks S3 on-prem and in the cloud. So there are some providers out there that do S3 compatible object stores in the cloud, and we've tested quite a few of them. So if you have an interest in one of the ones you don't see here, please reach out to your Rubrik account rep and they'll explain which ones you can use with this product. Additionally, we support NFS. Some customers want to write to an NFS target on-prem. Maybe it's convenient, maybe they just happen to have one. Kind of works out nice that way. Additionally, you'll see here the Rubrik Cloud Vault that Chris mentioned. So I have an environment here pre-configured for that, so I could select that as well. For this demo though, I'm just going to click on the Azure location that I have configured. I'll click on the existing bucket that I have, and then you'll see I'm offered the opportunity to select the tier of storage. So like Chris mentioned, some customers, they like to have some data at their fingertips, maybe with a shorter retention period, so they can do those operational recoveries on a day-to-day basis. So 30 days, maybe we'll write for 30 days into the hot tier of Azure. But that may not be good enough for my long-term retention, so maybe I want to do dailies or monthlies. I'll go ahead and say monthlies here, and maybe I want to send those to Amazon. And then I'll pick a bucket that I already have created, and then I can pick the tier I want to send it to. If I want to keep these for a long time, forever being the most long time, I can go ahead and select the cheapest tier here, the Glacier Deep Archive. And then I can say, forever, 7 years, 1 day, or I can go custom and just specify the number of days I need. So you don't see 10 years here, but you can certainly specify 3,650 days to achieve that. So once I've set this up, I'll go ahead and pick 7 years, something like a financial. I can click save, and that'll save my selection. You can see it automatically named here, but I can certainly, name this myself. So easy setup here for this policy definition. Now, I'm not going to save that because we have a handful in here, and I don't necessarily need yet another. So now I'll back out over to systems. Now the next step typically is to add the systems that we're looking to protect. We can do this quite simply by clicking on Add System and selecting the type of system that we're looking to protect. If we don't see it named here, chances are it falls under the generic SMB and NFS, things like Linux file servers, things like Windows file servers, or just array technologies that we can support that maybe we just don't yet have API integration with. When we talk about API integration, what that generally means is, and I'll pick on the power scale here, it means that we have access into the system's APIs sufficient for us to draw a map of connectivity for that array and to integrate into the snapshot capabilities of the array. I'm not talking about proprietary snapshot techniques. I'm talking about the most basic form of snapshot. So if we think about technologies on other arrays that leverage snapshots but add additional value, but they're very proprietary to the array vendor, those are not the technologies this product is using. We're taking a one-time snapshot per job. We're using that snapshot to scan and avoid open file challenges. And then when the job is complete and we've protected all the data within that snapshot, we call to release that snapshot and delete it. We don't maintain a snapshot chain on the customer's arrays. Now you also see here that we're asking for the root credentials. So that's one option, and we can certainly enter the root credentials here. Sorry, my password manager keeps jumping up. And we'll use them, and we'll connect to the array. We'll build that map. But as part of connecting a new array that is API integrated, we're going to establish a set of credentials for ourselves on that array through the use of these credentials. Now, if root credentials aren't for you and you don't want to use those, or security says you can't, we certainly have in our user's guide a way to prescribe a least privileged user that meets the needs for this connection. But suffice it to say that the credentials you use here to add the array, they're discarded at the end of the addition because we set up our own least privileged credentials on the array through this process. So once the array is added, we'll see it here, and all of the shares and exports that are on the array will be quickly enumerated. Now, I have a modest lab environment, so as you can imagine, I don't have as many as some production customers may, but this is good enough for us to take a quick peek. So I'll pick on this NFS share to start, and we can see here, this is where I define protection. So those policies that I just went through showing you how to create, we can apply one that we've pre-created here. And so in this case, this one's gonna send dailies to AWS for 30 days. And once that's applied, I can come down, I can execute that policy now. If I want to set some exclusions, I can certainly set exclusions. So, maybe somebody's trying to make a music server out of my NAS. I'll go ahead and exclude all the music-related file extensions. That can be done, although that'd be pretty ridiculous. But if I need to, I can actually break out directories as well. So I don't have to assign my policies directly at the share or export level. So for example, down here on the NetApp, I have a rather large, obviously virtualized, NFS export, and I want to break out the engineering directory. So if we click on backup directory, I'll be taken to a flow where I can add the directory and bring it out of the main export, and then apply a unique policy to it at a subdirectory level beneath that export. And you see the icon here indicating the same. So this allows me to give a unique policy to this location that is different from one I might want to apply at the top. And then I can set an exclusion for that location as part of this one. So if I did need to apply a policy here, I certainly may. Full flexibility is really the key here. And then when I want to do a recovery, it's as simple as selecting the location that the protection policy was applied to and clicking restore. I'm actually going to pick one that has something. I'm not seeing it fetch the data. All right, let's see. Nope, okay, it's working now. Minor hiccup there. So we can see all the points in time for all the backups that have executed since we started, and I can select from any of those, and I can do a full restore. I can do, so that one may have been cleaned up. Oh no, something's not working here very nicely. Well, of course, we're in a demo, so Murphy wins. So let me go back out here to Systems, and I'll select a different one, and I'll click Restore. There we go. At any rate, I can do a full restore from any point in time, and then I can do a restore of an individual item. I can drill down into the items. I can locate the item I want and do a restore, or I can leverage the search feature with these token values to locate the data. If I'm not terribly sure where the data I'm looking to restore resides, I can always come out here to search. And let's say, for example, I was looking for a PDF, but I'm not entirely sure which PDF I'm looking for. I can certainly execute a search, and typically the search is coming back. Why am I having trouble in my demo? Why? Because I'm on a webinar, and that's the best time to have trouble. All right. Well, unfortunately, folks, it looks like I'm having a bit of technical difficulty here. This is not typical. All right. So at any rate, data search usually goes pretty quickly. And then as we're looking at our activities, we can see our activity logs here. We can see how long it takes to execute these backups or the recoveries. And then we can even filter on the location, the type of job that we were running, and any status conditions that we wanted to see if we were looking through these particular activities.
Thank you, Joe. Unfortunate about that. Like this, what Joe was talking about was just what we mentioned a little bit before. This data discover, and this is what it looked like. This is in dark mode, but we give you the full flexibility to just like identify where that cold data is, and then present it back to your teams. And so let's just recap this. So if you think you're protected, you're leveraging NDMP, it's good. Are you meeting your questions to ask are you meeting your backup SLAs? If you can't meet them today, are you going to be able to meet them tomorrow? And then if you're using just a snap and replication, yeah, it may be immutable in the secondary target, but also, is that truly immutable? If they can't delete the data, but can they encrypt the whole entire system? There's potential for that. So the desire and need for organizations to have a true code-based and credential isolated, separated copy of their NAS data at scale is critical to businesses today. So that's what we do. We protect your NAS data, any size, with no data left behind. We're going to back it up. We're going to protect it and give you the ability to recover that data with the speed and with the SLAs that your organization requires. And lastly, we're going to give you those tools, those ransomware investigation and sensitive data discovery tools. So imagine if you're able to get the analysis and insights of scanning billions of files and millions of directories to understand where that PII data lives. And is there an anomaly in a different share? What data do I want to restore that potentially hasn't been encrypted or that isn't tied to any malware vulnerabilities? This is something that we all focus on at Rubrik, is to be that cyber recovery and cyber resiliency solution on block data. On the largest opportunity is our unstructured data, and then also your cloud environments as well too. So bring it all together. We just wanted the next steps and resources that we have is in the attachments, you have the ebook around unstructured data. We have the solution brief for NAS Cloud Direct. If you want to have a demo of this and you want to actually see this environment and talk more with your Rubrik team, we're happy to do that as well. And lastly, we have our flagship customer experience or conference that's coming up virtually. We're going to be speaking with the great Ryan Reynolds, who will be joining us. Hope everyone's seen Welcome to Wrexham, because that's a great show. But what we have here is great forums and great talk tracks around all the latest releases and new technologies that are coming out with Rubrik and what we're offering, and also a lot of customer stories. A lot of our customers today are going to get on and talk about their experience with Rubrik and what they've been doing and how they're protecting their environment from a ransomware attack. And with that being said, I want to thank everybody and love to get some questions.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation, great demo. It is now time for the Q&A segment of this show. So if you're out in the audience, you have a question, now's the time to get it in. I appreciate all the great questions that have come in thus far. I'm just going to go ahead and start off with this one. They want to know, can you guys do any sort of ransomware or encryption detection on the data set that you're protecting?
That's a great
Chris,
question.
you want I should go ahead and take care of that one?
Yeah, I'll take care of that. And so it's a big important question that people have today is like, okay, I'm backing up the data, but can I run this analysis and understand what anomalies are? And the answer is yes. So with the NAS Cloud Direct, we are that data mover, and we write those backups to Rubrik's cyber resiliency cloud. We're able to run this anomaly detection, entropy detection off the backups and identify where the sensitive data lives. And why we do that in our cloud is because we own the storage and the compute, so we can monitor the cost associated with running these jobs and these analyses. And so we are handling that and taking on that weight. So our customers don't have to do that, don't have to manage it. All customers are getting are just the benefits of being able to find and understand their data more effectively. And what happens when you usually hit with a ransomware attack, the first place you're going to go back to is looking where your backups are. And knowing that you have a secure backup, but then also additional analysis is a great value.
Absolutely, yeah. It's great to know that your data is protected and free from any sort of ransomware, malware like that. Here's another good question. You talked about virtual machine backups, protecting VMs. They want to know, what kind of data do you store on the VM?
That's a great question. Joe, I'll take that too, and you can interrupt me and I can clarify this. But the VM itself is stateless. It's truly stateless. So it's a RAM intensive VM. So all it's on the VM is just some binaries that will just move data. We don't land any of your backup data there. It's all happening in memory to move it out. And so let's say in a disaster event where you lose an entire data center, because we've abstracted that control plane and lives in Rubrik Security Cloud, you can lose that VM. We'll just spin up another VM, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's in another data center, and connect to your cloud instance and start restoring data. So essentially, when we say stateless, we truly mean stateless.
Nice. Nice. And then what about scalability? They're asking, how does NAS Cloud Direct scale?
You know what? That's also a great question, because if we're seeing the growth rate of unstructured data going from like having customers today asking about exabytes of protection, and then we'll see zettabytes coming up soon, it's only growing. So the platform is built to scale. So since we're just a VM, a data mover, and our index is hyper scalable, we can cluster these VMs together to an unlimited amount and to increase the amount of throughput, the amount of concurrent threads that we're performing. So as your data set grows, you need to protect that. We just add more VMs to meet that performance. And we'll move data as fast as your WAN or your target storage will allow us. So what we found is we're not going to be the bottlenecks. We're gonna move data and scale to the needs that you have at any size.
Very nice. And then what about, they're asking about, how do I protect cloud file workloads?
Oh, that's a great question. And like when I used to work in just the like on-prem file system world, I thought, you know what, I'm never going to see cloud-based file workloads. It's too much compute. It's too expensive to do that. That has completely changed over the last 6 months for us working with customers. We're finding more and more customers trying to leverage cloud-based file workloads as a DR, or even just for burstability and ability to just leverage cloud file services in different locations. And so we've actually thought ahead about that and built that in. So we can truly protect your cloud-based file workloads with just a stateless VM, because we can do that in Azure and AWS natively, just deploying it in that environment and protecting those workloads. And the next question is usually like, all right, well, it's cloud-based file workloads. Like, can I just use the native tools? Well, the same question goes on-prem as well. Do you use the native tools in your VM storage appliance to protect and back up that data? You don't. You're looking for that true immutable protection. And that's the same story that we apply to our cloud-based file workloads. And all that's still managed in the same interface, same Rubrik Security Cloud, no matter how many locations or how many sites you deploy.
Very nice. It's a good question here from Heath. He wants to know, as a vendor risk manager, what should I look for, or what questions should I ask to determine potential vendor ransomware readiness to protect my company data?
Great question. Joe, you want to take that one?
Sorry, can you go ahead and repeat that? I was actually trying to troubleshoot the lab with the engineering team.
No worries, no worries. Heath is asking, as a vendor risk manager, what should I look for? What questions should I ask to determine potential vendor ransomware readiness to protect my data?
Great question. Great question. So one of the trends that we're actually seeing right now is this need for independence from any one array vendor provider and their tooling and capabilities. So imagine, if you will, a provider that has built-in backup capabilities. This is great if you intend to stay within that provider, and that provider can check all of the boxes for things around cyber resiliency, and that provider, survives an event or is available to you to use in the, incident response. So if you have something that gets, yellow tape wrapped around it by a legal entity, you can't necessarily use that for the recovery. So one of the things that, Chris brought up the Epic Honor Roll. They're actually acknowledging this as well on the healthcare side, is you need a tool that can protect the data agnostic of the array vendor technology, bringing that data out and being able to put that data back into something, quote unquote, compatible. So in the case of NAS, we're talking protocol compatible. If I protect an SMB share, I need to be able to recover that SMB share to another SMB provider's platform. That could be on-prem, that could be in the cloud. But to lock yourself into one vendor's ecosystem of tools that is also the primary storage vendor's ecosystem can come fraught with challenges. So really one of the things that you want to keep an eye out for is your ability to independently recover under any circumstance. Now, the other half of that coin would surely be the resiliency of the data and the security of the location where you place that cyber resilient copy of data. How do you measure that cyber resiliency? Well, you want to consider, is that data subject to manipulation or deletion? And that's usually where retention lock policies for immutability come into play. So being able to enable something like that over the duration of the retention of that data is really, really critical to ensure that no threat actors can come in and clobber that data out from underneath you. The Rubrik Cloud Vault offering that we provide is a really great approach to this because we call it credentially air gapped, if you will. It's not part of a tenant that you as an organization manage within any of the clouds. It is a tenant within Azure that Rubrik operates, but it's not known to a threat actor moving around within your environment laterally that you actually have data stored in this location. So if they're out there working to encrypt or disable your ability to recover, it's not a copy they're able to see or be aware of to act against. And so it's a bit safer that way from that aspect. So yeah, you definitely want to try to make sure those copies are safe and that you stay off of any one ecosystem so that if you get closed out of that ecosystem for any reason, you can still recover.
Nice. I love that vendor agnostic approach and that kind of flexibility. Great answer. Here's another interesting question. This one's from Kiana. It's very lengthy. I'm going to try to just paraphrase it here. They say that my CISO is adamant that using Microsoft Azure and OneDrive is sufficient to protect our company's data from ransomware. How does Rubrik integrate with Azure and OneDrive to protect our data, in the event ransomware happens? And then do you have any advice on what they can provide Rubrik or provide about Rubrik to get their CISO thinking about securing their data better?
Great question. So we have a couple of other product areas at Rubrik that address both Azure as well as OneDrive under the Microsoft 365 umbrella. That's something you'll probably want to talk with your individual Rubrik account teams about. We refer to the Azure protection, generally speaking, as what we call cloud native protection. And then on the Microsoft 365 side, we simply refer to it as M365 protection. So if you want to raise those questions and concerns with your account teams at Rubrik, please do so. And we also have more information out on the Rubrik.com website as well if you're looking to investigate that further. Yeah, great question.
Excellent. And then here's another good one from Brandon. He wants to know, how does Rubrik's NAS Cloud Direct solution integrate with different NAS architectures and protocols?
Okay, so we saw the few named array technologies that we have API integration with. Anything outside of that umbrella, we're not going to be able to capture a snapshot, but the way this product was built, and actually the NFS and SMB client stack being built from the ground up, actually taking what I love to refer to as the race car approach, the engineers who built this thing actually poured out onto the table everything that the SMB and NFS clients do and threw away anything that wasn't of consequence for moving quickly and data protection. And so what you'll find is that the protocols in this stack don't actually mount the shares of the exports. They only make the one or two necessary metadata calls needed to scan the data. We say things like faster than flash. I don't like parables like that. I prefer to just say we do the smallest number of operations possible to achieve the goal, and that is completely scanning the snapshot or the active file system. So from there, the data calls that we make, because we're not mounting, you're probably like, oh, well, how do you get at the data? We know the protocol calls that are necessary, and so we just make the low-level RPC calls necessary to move that data as quickly as possible. From this perspective, we can leverage those generic SMB and generic NFS connectors to connect to a myriad of technologies well outside of those API integrated ones. Now, we do still have to scan the open file system on those platforms, but the protocols generally have means for handling that sort of scenario. And because we're incremental forever, if we missed a file on the first backup, maybe we'll pick it up on the second. So you may see a couple of files fall out if they're open during the backup, but typically we'll either retry or skip over that and catch it in the next run.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're starting to run out of time here in our webinar slot. We've got lots of great questions that have come in. Again, I appreciate those from everyone. Before we go, I do want to remind everyone about the handouts tab. There's additional information there. There's a Rubrik ebook on protecting unstructured data with zero trust data management. There's also a sheet there on Rubrik NAS Cloud Direct, how to cyberproof your NAS file data. Make sure that you download those PDFs before you go. And then, of course, a big thank you to Chris and Joe for the excellent presentation and demo today. Thanks for being on.
Thanks very much. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And of course, thanks to our friends at Rubrik for joining us on the webinar. Visit Rubrik.com, get more information, and of course, make sure that you join the upcoming Rubrik Forward Conference happening May 17th through 18th. It's a virtual event. You can't miss it. Ryan Reynolds is going to be there, among other things. So make sure that you check that out. And if you click on that link right there that says register now on your screen, that's actually a hyperlink that will open up the Rubrik Forward landing page, and you can just register for that event right now. All right, and in fact, I'll leave that up while I announce the winner of our Amazon $250 gift card we're giving out on today's live event. This one is going out to Martin Chen from Michigan. Congratulations, Martin Chen from Michigan. And we'll also reach out to our best question prize winner as well after the event today. Thank you to everyone who joined us on the webinar. I hope that you learned a lot about securing your unruly, unstructured data from ransomware with Rubrik. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.